Hello and welcome to the Minds on the Frontline podcast, brought to you by the Frontline Strong Together 5 program. FST5 provides streamlined access to behavioral and mental health services, as well as crisis resources for Michigan's Frontline 5 workers and their families. This includes all professional, part-time, and volunteer firefighters, EMS, law enforcement, corrections officers, and 911 dispatchers in Michigan and their immediate family members. First responders and mental health experts collaboratively created FST5 to provide 24/7 live support, effective resources, and cutting-edge services to prevent and alleviate PTSD, anxiety, depression, and other frontline work-related mental and behavioral health challenges. Need help now? If you are a frontline worker in Michigan or an immediate family member experiencing any crisis, work-related, substance abuse, depression, relationships, finances, or any other, reach out by calling 1-833-34-STRONG or go to fst5.org for more information. I'm Jeff Lassers, one of the hosts of the Minds on the Frontline podcast, and I am a professional firefighter, paramedic, educator, and content creator. Minds on the Frontline is co-hosted by Mike Mattern, a professional firefighter and paramedic and a peer support team member for his fire department and the FST5 program. Mike is a board member for the Michigan Crisis Response Association and has extensive experience in frontline worker mental and behavioral health. Also co-hosting with us today is Scott Taylor, a recently retired police officer from the city of Warren and a lead peer with the FST5 program. Scott serves as the president of the Michigan Fraternal Order of Police, or FOP, Lodge Number 124, and is the Michigan Officer Wellness Liaison for the National FOP, where he works to improve mental health support and wellness resources for law enforcement officers. Together, we aim to inform, educate, and entertain frontline workers, their families, and the public about the realities of mental and behavioral health challenges faced by those on the front lines. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Kevin Sehlmeyer, Michigan's State Fire Marshal. With over 3 decades of fire service experience, including a distinguished career with the Grand Rapids Fire Department, Kevin is a passionate advocate for frontline worker well-being and mental health. Since 2017, he has led the Bureau of Fire Services, championing initiatives to reduce fire fatalities, promote resilient leadership, and expand access to critical mental health resources through programs like FST5. In this episode, Kevin shares his hands-on perspective on the unique challenges facing Michigan's frontline workers and the importance of programs like FST5. We discuss how mental health support can enhance recruitment and retention, the value of integrating wellness into state training requirements, and why reducing the stigma around mental health is vital for the future of frontline workers. We also touch on the financial barriers that often come with accessing therapy or counseling. For many frontline workers and their families, even a modest copay for every visit can quickly add up, making mental health care feel out of reach. Thanks to the FST5 grant funding, Wayne Health has eliminated copays for Michigan's frontline workers and their families, ensuring that cost is no longer an obstacle to getting the help they need. For more information, visit fst5.org. As always, we aim to provide meaningful conversations that inform, educate, and inspire those on the front lines and their families. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and make sure to like and subscribe to all Minds on the Frontline podcast social media channels. Thank you, and enjoy the show. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Good
How
morning.
are you?
Morning.
Well, we're here with the State Fire Marshal. Kevin, introduce everybody who you are, what you do, and where you do it.
I am Kevin Sehlmeyer. I'm the State Fire Marshal, and I get to be the State Fire Marshal all over the whole state. That's a pretty cool job, but they do have an office in Lansing.
So what do you do as a State Fire Marshal? You just go from building to building, township to
No,
township?
the one thing that they don't tell you when you become the State Fire Marshal is all the things that the State Fire Marshal's office does. So if it's hospitals, nursing homes, schools, child care centers, we're inspecting them. We do plan review. And then, our community risk reduction, we're trying to reduce fire fatalities across the state. We're having a tough week. We've had 3 fatal fires this week, which ties right into the whole mental health thing, because if you're having fatal fires, it's not good for anybody's mental health, right? Every one of those civilian fire deaths, so if we've been to 83 fatal fires, we've actually affected 83 fire departments in their mental health, right? Because, all of us, we're going to help everyone and we're going to save everyone, right? I mean, that's kind of the mantra, right? Life safety first. And so then when we don't, we aren't successful with the life safety, then, we start wondering, well, what if, or
weighs on
what
it.
happened? Yeah.
Yeah.
What drew me to it and was the training aspect. I've done a lot of training throughout my career, and the fire training is under the Bureau of Fire Services. So for 18 months initially, hey, let's reduce fire fatalities across the state, because we'd seen what we'd done in Grand Rapids, so let's take that there. Just got accredited in the Grand Rapids Fire Department as I was leaving, so taking some of that, hey, how could we improve some things? And then ultimately in 18 months, if you could fix some of the fire training stuff, some of the processes.
And you're not exactly training, but you're influencing the fact that
you become the training director.
Right.
Which is even crazy if you think about it, right? Of saying, hey, when you get to Lansing, and then, there's fireworks. I'm going to regulate the sale of fireworks. We took in $3.1 million last year in the safety fees from fireworks, which then goes back to fire training, right?
Yeah.
And the other part is, when I had retired, I knew that fireworks safety fee money was there, and I was doing a ton of teaching around the state. So, there's opportunities for instructors to get out and to teach, and now morph it into being the head fire official in the state and being a member of the Firefighter Training Council. And I know we're going to talk more into that, but then take it back to, okay, how do we take some of those fireworks training fees, right?
Yeah.
That go out to the counties, and then how do we do more mental health training?
It's a good time to follow up to that, as you've been a huge advocate of mental health and initiatives like the FST5 program, the Minds on the Frontline podcast. Yeah. Nobody's paid you to say any of these things. You seem to actually be highly motivated. Yeah. So where does your motivation come from being such an advocate of mental health for frontline workers?
I'm not sure whether it was 91 or 92, but I know it was one of those 2 years, okay? We had a string of terrible fires in Grand Rapids. And not only do we have a string of terrible fires in Grand Rapids, I mean, I'm talking about losing 3 to 5 people at each one of these fires, and a lot of kids, okay? And it all happens on one shift. And it doesn't happen on my shift. It happens on some of my friends' shift I play softball with and such, and I start to see how it's affecting all of them. Fast forward to 1995, 96, I break a bone in my hand playing softball, of all things. Puts me on light duty. And while I'm on light duty, back in those days, answer the phone. So, hello, good morning, Grand Rapids Fire Department. How can I direct your call? Chief, line 3, right? Those type of things. And I'm like, this bone wouldn't heal in my hand. And I'm like on light duty for like 9 months, and I'm climbing the walls. And one day, a civilian who we had doing fire education comes up to me and goes, hey, Lieutenant Chuck, that's what we called him on the streets, Chuck Porter, great guy. He can't go with Freddie today, or he can go with Freddie today, but he can't go with Freddie like tomorrow. Hey, would you go? And I'm like, what? Wait a minute. I got a cast on my arm that I've been wearing forever, it feels like. And we're going to go out and do what? And he says, you sit on a chair, there's a bag. Freddie's going to tell you what to get out of the gym bag, basically, lighters, a smoke alarm. And I went, and it took one day of watching that, and I said, hey, could we do one of these like every day? Because that got you out of answering the phone, right?
Yeah,
right. But then the other thing is we got a fire safety trailer at the time, which was through a donation, and I started going out and doing that. And as we did that, as we went out and educated second graders, the number of fatal fires dropped in the city. 2 years after that, 0 years, where we had zero fire fatalities of civilians, right? And it starts affecting, that string of where we had 3 or 4 fatal fires, where we had over a dozen fatalities. I saw what it did to folks' mental health. Mm-hmm. And so now fast forward being part of the Union Safety and Health Committee, and there really wasn't a big push on mental health even there, other than we knew it was firefighter safety, right? Yeah. So now fast forward to here, and that's what you ask, what motivates me is to not have first responders have to go to fatal fires. And I was telling somebody last night, I was at a Firefighter of the Year event in Grand Rapids, great event. Got to see some of the newest members of the fire department, got to see some of the oldest members and some of the retirees that came back, right? But with that being said, in my mind, I was on the southwest side of Grand Rapids. It's a Saturday morning. It's 9 a.m. There's a mom meeting us in a driveway who was telling her kids are trapped in a fire. I can tell you who was there. I can tell you exactly who was there.
You can hear the diesel engine.
Yeah, absolutely.
All the things.
Yeah, all those things that now take that And a friend of mine, Bart Perry, does a lot of stuff with backing the badge over in the Grand Rapids area and stuff. We came on the job together, and he just started saying, hey, it's another rock in the backpack. And so, I did a little backpacking this summer. I backpacked twice with my kids. The second time out, I took less stuff. Why? Because it was more enjoyable.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
You're ripping your back
what was the
apart.
difference? I had an experience, and from that experience, I said, take some stuff out of the backpack. To me, in a lot of ways, the mental health thing is, and to whether it's Mike or Scott, hey, let me take a few things out of the backpack. Yep. And if I do that, you're going to go, hey, that feels better. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the hardest thing we're trying to convince first responders is, number one, everybody's got a backpack, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's fire.
Yeah.
And how do we take some rocks or take some weight off?
Which is the only thing you choose in that equation.
Yes.
You can only choose what to take out.
Well, you don't get a choice of the rocks to get put in it.
Right.
No.
You don't get a choice, you get to carry it.
No.
Right.
Well, you put the pack on the day you started.
That's what I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You've agreed that you're going to have this pack. You don't get to choose how heavy it's about to get, but you get to choose how light it can become.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's the stuff you're going to run on too, right? And, sometimes early in your career, some stuff bothers, sometimes it doesn't, right? So,
Kevin, so first responders, like across the country, recruitment and retention, huge problem right now, right? Especially frontline fire.
Right.
You mentioned earlier that in the 80s, only hiring 2 guys and 1,000 people are applying. I know, but when I started, same thing. How do you think that mental health support and programs such as FST5, how can our program help with that issue?
well, I think there's a lot of people that are leaving. And they're leaving because of what they've seen in the rocks that are going in the backpack. And it may not be. I'll say this. When I was a Grand Rapids firefighter, that was my job. That's how I supported my family, right? But I'll say this. As I travel around as a state fire marshal and you get outside of really the bottom part of the mitten, right? That's where most of the career departments are. Although we've got, we're seeing phenomenal growth in the Traverse City area with locals and different things, right? And we still got locals in the UP. But my point to this is that we probably got 80% of the fire departments out there. Firefighting is not their primary way they support their family.
Correct.
And in a lot of them, it's tourism, it's agriculture, it's a whole host of things, which if you go look at what is Michigan good at, tourism, agriculture, manufacturing, right?
Yeah.
That drives everything, that's going on in our state. So when somebody goes to an event, like we just talked about, hey, we've never had a fatal fire before, and then see some of the things you see, or hey, we found, as our data is starting to say, the majority of the people who die in the state of Michigan are actually trying to escape at the time. They just, the smoke gets them before they get out. And when I started, you had 3 minutes, they said, to escape a fire. Today, they're saying 2 based on all the contents that are in there, okay? We keep finding people within 10 feet of the door, 10 feet of the door. That common. So when you start to look at that and people start to say, hey, I'm already hearing it from the boss that I was gone too much, or it's taken away from, I can't go to work, or even my family says I'm gone all the time. And pretty soon you start saying, well, which one gives? And I think of recruiting retention. Recruiting retention is totally different in a career department than it is in a volunteer fire department. I'm going to say it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And when I say that, it's not a one-size-fits-all answer.
Well, it's much harder to say I'm not going to go to work today,
right,
versus my volunteer job. And it's not diminishing anything. It's just you can't afford to not go to work.
Right.
Which is a lot of the reasons volunteers can't always commit to being a volunteer.
Yeah. And if my family isn't happy because I'm gone, right? Mm-hmm. And so in the process, I think when you start looking at recruiting and retention, it is the mental health aspect of it. The other thing that I looked at in my career in Grand Rapids, very rarely did I run on somebody I knew. And I lived in the city at different times, but I still didn't know everybody I ran on. Conversely, after I left Grand Rapids, I got asked to be on the Cortland Township Volunteer Fire Department, or Paid on Call Fire Department. And it actually was probably the best place to be before I became the state fire marshal, because now I got it. Hey, I'm going to tell you right now, in Cortland Township, it's going to be the chief. About 4 o'clock this afternoon, some more people show up. By 5, 6 o'clock tonight, there might be a dozen to more show up, okay?
Sure.
But during the day, so pretty soon he says, hey, if you can just help me during the day, I'm not even going to ask you to get out of bed. I can get people to do that time. Can you help me? I started running on calls and saying that we're going to be the only 2 people there, okay? But then It was, hey, we're at an extrication, and it was somebody's grandfather to a kid that my kids wrestled with, that he was sitting in the stands 6 feet from me.
Right.
Yeah.
See where I'm going with that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a different
Or
thing.
even, hey, that's a kid I coached in a sport who OD'd.
Yep.
Right.
Okay? So when you start, that was the part, I'll say this, and I think it was timely that it was like, whoa, this is different. Because these are people you see in the community. These are people, like I said, you had on sports teams. These were relatives of kids that your kids hung out with and different things. So that was a different mindset. When you start to get into that, we start talking about, outstate, right? That's a whole component. And this program is, hey, it's law enforcement, it's fire, it's EMS, it's dispatch, right? It's corrections, but it's across all 83 counties. This is a big state.
And they're very diverse differences.
Yeah.
Not just the humans, just the conditions.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just 2 different states, basically, if you think about it.
3. I think it's 3.
Right.
I think you got the cities.
Right.
I think you got the suburbs. And then you got the rurals. I think
Yep.
it's like, and you can literally break this
And even the
place down.
rurals are totally
And the
different.
UP,
Oh, yeah, they have
the
their
UP
own
is
thing.
like another state.
There's Traverse
is.
City rural, and then there's, I've never heard of that township rural, right?
Right.
Right.
You've been a huge advocate for integrating mental health into the curriculum and the state, fire requirements, training requirements. Talk about some of the progress that's been made on that front and kind of what you envision moving forward here in the future that we can do to benefit recruits and seasoned professionals.
They do talk about mental health in the academy. Could we talk about it a lot more?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could we definitely make sure, and I will share this with you, every class that starts in the state, a training coordinator goes out. There's a slide in our slide deck now, okay, for Frontline Strong. Nice. And we also tell people,
Excellent.
and we tell the training coordinators, get your phone out, go to contacts, punch in Frontline Strong, 1833, right? Yep. And they put the number in, because you don't know when you're going to need that number, right?
Yep.
So we
appreciate that
are
more.
every class, because there's a training coordinator goes out there, and we have a slide in there. They are being exposed to this. The part that I don't think people understand is this is an EAP program, right? In a sense,
In a
right?
sense.
Yeah, it's
Right?
an FAP.
Yeah,
Frontline assistance
yeah.
program.
But
the same idea. It's
but
like,
one of the
I need help.
Yeah,
And it's designed to help you.
Yeah.
Yes.
The majority of the firefighters in the state don't know about it.
No.
No.
Yeah.
I know.
And I am shocked. I'm like,
Some of the
I'll be
people
at
I
an
work
event.
with
I'll
on
go,
the road don't know about it.
they're
It's
like-
hilarious.
Yeah. No, and just yesterday I'm trying to. This has been a week. A lot of stuff on the road, but just yesterday I was talking about. They go, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? I go, hey, I'm going to do this Frontline Strong. What's that?
Yeah.
I'm going, stop.
Right.
You should know about that, right? Because here's the deal. What I also have noticed is a lot of, we talk about if you do hospitality or tourism, or you're a farmer or you're in agriculture, you may not have insurance, or you may not have the best insurance. That's the other thing. The majority of the firefighters, because there's 25,000 of them across the state, are underinsured.
absolutely.
Heck, some of the folks that are career firefighters will tell you they're underinsured.
Yes.
Right.
All right.
Well,
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
And,
even
and
career,
underpaid, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, no,
Yeah.
but they're going to tell you they're under, like,
No, even
man,
the
that
insur- yeah.
that copay will kill you, right?
Imagine that copay being a lot less, so that I could make the decision to go to therapy more often, or at
Exactly.
all, to be able to
Yeah.
afford it. Even, you got a copay. Well, it's still, I can't afford it.
Right. And then you look at what they're doing up in Travers with Kobe, where you turn in your receipt for your copay and they
Right.
give you money,
We were
right?
just talking about
We
that.
should have that. Should be
Yes.
across the state.
Yes.
We're trying.
Well,
we're
that's-
starting
that's-
conversations.
No, it should. It should. Here's the deal. When my son started the fire academy, he was a clean slate. If you want to look at it, right?
Yeah.
He didn't have any. He had a here's your backpack.
Only
Welcome.
what his parents did to him.
Right. Yeah, true. Kid doesn't know what day his birthday's on, and we celebrate holidays. I had somebody tell me this the other day. Their kid came home and was mad because they found out that Thanksgiving was on Thursdays, because they came from a first responder
Yep.
family.
Yep.
And it was
It's whatever
just,
day it was.
Yeah.
That's why I married a girl whose dad was a firefighter.
Yeah.
Like, this is much easier. You get it already.
And my dad was a firefighter. My mom was a nurse. So
Yeah.
Yep.
they all worked holidays, right? So, this is the part where I say he's got a clean slate, right? So he runs on some stuff. He goes to some events. He sees some things. And then all of a sudden he says, I need help. And they say, $250 an hour, we can help you.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Yes.
And then pretty soon somebody's going, $250. That's like, do I buy groceries this week or this month, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even
So-
a $30 copay at once a week adds
up.
up very
Yeah.
quickly, and especially if you got 2 people in your family that need it.
Yep.
That's
Well,
quick.
and that's where we've started having the conversations about like a mental health presumption bill. Just like we know firefighting or any first responder job, we're going to get cancer probably.
Yeah.
Same thing what you're talking about. You come in with that clean slate or that empty backpack, and there's a presumption through our jobs and the duties that we perform, that backpack's going to get full. So we need to take care of that because you're 100%. One of the biggest things we hear on the peer support side thing when we try to get people in to see somebody is just that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I can afford it.
Right.
You know what I
remove
mean? Like
the
you talk,
obstacle. Just remove it.
and the program that Colby has is phenomenal. I've used it for some people that
Yeah.
we've helped. Yeah. And for those of you who don't know about it, it's up in the Grand Traverse area. Colby Taylor. What they do is they actually help pay for up to $500 to help pay for the treatment. And that's something that I think should be statewide no matter what.
And that's not
because-
just like inpatient treatment. It's any treatment you
Anything.
need for your mental
Yes.
behavioral health.
Yes.
They will help you out.
Yes.
Shout out to
and I've
Kobe.
been, without a doubt, shout out. And I've been beating the drum with the Michigan Township Association. I go to a lot of their events, and I share with them. I said, as a township supervisor, as a clerk, if somebody's coming to you and says, I believe I can tie this back to these calls, right?
Yep.
And I need that help. Why are we saying no to, even if it's 10 visits at $250 a visit, it's $2,500, right? Mm-hmm. You got more invested in them in turnout gear.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
you come to me and you say, we have a recruiting and retention problem. You're right, we do. Because there are some people that go, listen, I got to make a choice here.
Yeah.
I know where the stress is coming from, and there is a certain amount of stress that you're going to get with this job. And I look at the logo on the wall there, right? It doesn't matter whether you're a police officer, you're a firefighter, you're EMS, you're a dispatcher, you work in corrections, you're seeing this stuff every day. I'm glad you're sharing with me today. You're having these discussions, right?
Yes.
And I know we are, and that's something we've been talking about all the way back from 2020 also, right? And the other thing is the training. I need people to come to the training.
Yes.
We cancel a lot of training. Okay.
Yep.
And the reason we cancel the training is, hey, I've only got 2 people to come for this mental health class. And I think, I'll say this. I was at something a year ago, and I think maybe this is where we got to look at it. So Frank Lieb, who's retired out of FDNY, and he's the First Responders Center for Excellence with the NFFF. Mm-hmm. He's taken over that. Yep. And you're going to see phenomenal stuff out of the NFFF
Frank's
across
awesome.
the board. Frank's a great guy, right?
Yep.
So Frank is speaking, and he goes, we've got to make sure that when we teach a forcible entry class, when we teach a ventilation class, when we teach a response in law enforcement class, when we go to basic life support continuing ed, right? When we go to CPR class, right? We need to be talking about Frontline Strong, right? But we also need to work it in throughout. So I'll give you an example. We're going to talk fire behavior for a second. And Frank says it's this. Everybody like trail mix? Everybody likes trail mix.
Yep.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
There's a ton of sunflower seeds. There's a few more peanuts. There's a cashew or an almond every once in a while. But, man, you want to take trail mix to the next level? Throw an M&M in there. Am I right?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Right?
100%.
Yeah.
And so what he's saying is that, hey, listen, if we probably say, hey, this class is going to be about sunflower seeds or peanuts, everybody's going, oh, man, they're just, why are we doing that? But if you say there's going to be an occasional M&M thrown in here, right?
Right.
So what he's saying is, how did we get him there? We got him there with, it's a fire tactics class.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And we're going to talk about flow path. And we're going to talk about close the door. So when people put a door between, hey, in a fire department better be good at throwing ladders because we're going to tell civilians to go out windows. We better do a 360 and we better be able to get them down, right? But we're integrating it. Oh, hey, and while we're in this tactics class, hey, when the fire's done, wash your gear. Mm-hmm. Hey, we've hit on community risk reduction. We've hit on flow path, right? We've hit on cancer reduction. Hey, and are you all aware that this Frontline Strong? Right. Now we've hit on some mental health.
It's adding that extra critical element of what we need to be aware of.
And I think the other part of it is for many years, we didn't necessarily have the best mental health classes. You know what I mean? They were cookie cutter classes.
Yeah.
They were
Box
those
checkers.
That's what I'm saying.
They met the minimum requirements.
Yes.
You define what depression is.
But-
you define PTSD, but you don't get into any type of resource other than call your EAP.
Or it's not taught by a first responder. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Or
Whereas
somebody who's culturally competent at a minimum. Yeah.
I think over the past couple years, and I've seen the Q courses grow
Yeah.
on the mental
Oh, there's
health
a whole
side of
bunch
things.
coming out. Yeah.
And I think people are kind of stuck in that old school thought of like, oh, it's another mental health
Right.
class. But it's like you talked about, it's that word of mouth. If people just come out to the classes and see what they're doing with these Q courses now that the state has, they're phenomenal classes. I mean, they are taught by first responders. They're made by first responders. Just give them a chance. Go out and actually see it, because you'll see that it's not the mental health classes that you used to have. Take the time, pick a class, and just go to it, and just check it out. It's most of these classes are a couple hours.
yeah.
Take somebody with you.
Take somebody with you.
Yeah.
You know, but then once you go to that
Get
class,
your crew to go with you on your off day.
bring
Exactly.
it back and go. And like you talked about, for the younger members, hey, I went to this class. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Let's go to it.
Tell your neighbors.
Yes.
So that's a really good
Because
advice.
I hear this all the time. I didn't know that
Right.
Mike was there to do his suicide
Same
class, or
department.
I didn't know that Mike Warriga was there with
the rescue.
to the
Right.
rescue. And they're like, I would have went to that. And
Right.
it's like, I don't know what the answer. And when I say I don't know what the answer is, trust me, for 7.5 years I've been trying to crack the code. What is the one way that I can get a message to all 25,000 firefighters in the state, right?
yeah.
And then I'll still get, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
With
There's
all the
nothing you can
social
do about it.
media, with
Yeah.
all the exposure things can get, how is it that we can we can't hit everybody?
Yeah, it's amazing.
You know?
It is.
That speaks to how much stuff's out there.
Yes.
So we've given a lot of advice in this, and you've even brought up your son and talking to almost like a version of your younger self. But let's speak more to the younger generation and talk to those younger people. If you could advise a person 30 years ago, the beginning of all this stuff you got into down the road of the fire service in general, what is the most valuable insight or resource that you wish you had at that time that leads to, let's all face it, physical, financial, emotional wellness to go have a great time with whatever the end result is of your career?
You wouldn't get out of bed every day and go do stuff like this if there wasn't something driving you.
Yeah.
Right? It's about we, not me. And if it's about we, then we need to have the Frontline Struggle number in our phone. We need to know that it exists. We need to know that there's a time. And then, the other thing is I had a time in my life where I was there too, right?
Yeah, the human aspect, when we're humaning at work, a lot of that comes out. Yeah.
Hey, I've had it, I'll say during my career, we were working out. Back when it wasn't popular to work out. How about that in the fire? I've lived through that part of it too, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so you're sitting in there and you're just, in between sets or in between taking turns or, to lift or whatever. And people are like, hey, what's going on? Oh, geez,
John.
they're going to repossess my car. They're going to what? Well, hey, we have all at some point in our life bought something that we probably shouldn't have bought that would be considered a luxury item, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you think about it at the time, you're like, well, if I work 3 overtimes a month, I could afford all these toys, right? And then you find out that you don't even have time to ride the toys,
Right.
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And then you find out that toy you just spent X for is worth maybe half the value now, right?
If that.
And so that's real life stuff.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
In the fact of you're getting the backpack the day you start, and there are going to be rocks in it. And at some point, you got to justify. I justified it by Colorado Springs. I do not need this.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And you'd say, but it only weighs a pound. That's one.
That's 1 pound less.
Right.
And a couple pounds feels totally different, right?
It really
what was the
does.
difference? But sometimes with that, it's, hey, wait a minute, I experienced this over here, and now I know what I have to change. I'm going to carry less stuff up that next mountain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
With that also being said, I think I'll take that back to mental health. Is that at some point you've got to go. You got to go take stuff out of the backpack.
Right.
Yes.
So
You got to be tough enough to carry it
Yeah.
when you have to, wise enough to take it out when you can.
Yeah.
And if you
Yes.
don't, you're going to have a sore back, right? I mean, you're going to feel bad. It's
You're going to break.
Right.
Eventually, you ain't walking
Something's
anymore.
going to
Right.
break.
Yeah.
The
Right.
backpack might break off, and you might not have a job anymore.
Or it might be your knee, right? Because you're
Anything.
taking the step up or you trip over something, right?
Yeah. I might just have a mantrum. I don't want to carry this stupid thing anymore.
Yeah. Well, and something we started doing, and I'll say that we started doing it in Grand Rapids right before I left. So as the Deputy Chief of Support Services, I got to interact with annual physicals, right? Get with the occupational health clinic. And I said, hey, I'm in charge of this, right? And Chief says, you're in charge of it. So I went and actually met with the person, and I said, listen, some people think this physical is a joke. What do you mean they think it's a joke? Well, they sat on a stool. You asked them some questions. You didn't even ask them to bend over. You didn't touch their toes. You didn't see whether they had range of motion in their arms, any of that stuff. And you didn't ask them. And can I ask you one thing? Will you please ask them how they're doing with their mental health? How's things been going? And when somebody tells you, see, here's the other part. When somebody tells you, I got a problem, you got to have an answer. So at the time, there was no Frontline Strong. We had an EAP program, but we actually had it there. And you'd be surprised how many people even said, they go, hey, that was a pretty good physical. And I'd go, really? Why was that a good physical? Well, for one, they actually had me bend over. They actually had me, stand on one leg. They checked my balance and different things. They asked me questions. They
didn't feel like they were just getting a pencil.
Yeah, they hey, I got an exam, right? And then the other thing is, what was cool this year, and I thought this was interesting, they said, they actually asked me how I'm doing. Yeah. And was there anything that was bothering me? And I go, oh, all right, that's cool. And it's little things like that bring value to things. And I think that's one of the things with Frontline Strong is once you use it, you're going to know about it. Mm-hmm. And I would hope you'd never have to use it.
Right.
But how do we get the word out to that it is available and it is okay?
It's one of those things. If you plan for it, get prepared, it won't happen.
Yeah.
Rather than be caught by surprise.
Yeah. And Mike, I love to tell the stories. I tell it all over the place. How you and some others have vetted the system, right? Hey, 2 a.m. Hey, I got a gambling problem, and and then going to see the clinicians, and I think that's the part that we also want to share.
Yeah.
And I'll ask. I don't know. Is that getting out in the law enforcement community too? That people are like, these people get us.
It's starting. It's like everything else. It's the word's starting to get out. We're physically knocking on doors, going to departments. We're getting the message out there, and we're seeing an increase from the law enforcement perspective of people that are utilizing the website and the program.
Yeah, we have a mutual friend that's a therapist, and he has mentioned a number of times that the increase in law enforcement officers reaching out for help has been tremendous.
Well,
for help.
Yeah, when I do my presentations to law enforcement, the first thing I say, we're so screwed up, we don't even know we're screwed up, right? Because it's a norm. Yeah. It's a norm. We think it's normal to be screwed up.
What is that normalization of deviance?
Exactly.
It's normal that we go to after a midnight shift to go drink alcohol.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we? It's 6 a.m.
That's called the culture.
Yeah.
Right.
That's culture. Everybody.
That's normalization.
Yes, that's culture.
Yeah. Everybody gambles. What do you mean? Everybody does. That's normal.
We talked about, hey, go to a mental health class the next year and take your crew, take somebody else with you. The same thing is to say, hey, we need to do a little better job of letting know the resources are out there. And I share with the folks that are on the career side of whether it's law enforcement or fire. Yeah. Most of you have an EAP program. Yeah, we sure do. I said, now you got 2.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And I'll say this, that, okay, you mean I got options? Yeah, you do. Because, some people are like, oh, I don't want West Bloomfield to know
totally
that I'm
get
getting
that.
help,
well,
right?
That's
or I don't want Grand Rapids to know.
Yeah. Yes.
But these folks...
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
And even like
nobody
you said,
will know.
West Bloomfield, if you don't want to use your EAP, they should also be happy you're willing to call anybody.
Right.
Well,
Because they benefit from you being happy and healthy.
The EAP should also have our information.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
If people don't, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and there's no reason an EAP group can't be in our group of people we recommend, because a lot of EAPs, they contract with professional therapy services.
Right.
So they're already seeing other people. They just happen to contract with that specific location.
Yeah.
So we do, what I'm saying is we give a bad rap to EAP, but EAP is made up of professional clinicians, and hopefully the one your agency has access to is culturally competent.
If you're a leader in the fire service, okay, you've got to acknowledge that mental health is an issue, okay?
Yes.
First off. Second, if you've taken advantage of the services, right? And I say taking advantage because it's kind of the system took advantage of us mentally, right?
Yes.
And now we need to fix it, right?
Yep.
But to talk about that with folks, probably a year and a half ago, I was at the Michigan Fire Inspector Conference, okay? And I get to go to all the conferences, so I'm trying to throw. There's always a Frontline slide in there now, right?
Yeah.
Wednesday wrap-ups, right? I'm trying to put the slides in there. It's in the slide deck for when the training coordinators go out. But I talked about many times you have to take care of yourself, and the state fire marshal's got a mental health professional. Mm-hmm. Just like I've got a doctor, I've got an eye doctor. I've got a dentist. So if I go get my teeth cleaned a couple times a year because I want to have good teeth, why wouldn't I a couple times a year? And some years not. And I get to give shout out to one of my classmates. He said to me, he goes, I have a standing visit with a mental health professional. Some years we talk about all my victories for the year. We talk about all the good things that have happened, his grandkids now and everything else. And some years I probably go back and see him a couple times afterwards because he says, "Hey, we need to." But that's planning
so self-aware,
right?
And that person is enjoying life so much more,
right,
by being able to find a process to offload the things that are causing him his grief,
right?
Or
whatever. That's just leadership. To be honest, I mean, if you're put in a leadership position, what's your main job? Take care of the people that work for work under you. Everybody thinks as a leader you have to have this stoic, I'm a rock, nothing bothers me. The organizational leaders that do that, they're not doing their people a service, because you have to let yourself be vulnerable to let your people be vulnerable.
And the other thing was, I was surprised afterwards of how many people came up and they said, your talk this morning was, it connected with me. Okay, what connected with you? The mental health part. I probably heard that more than, we got a fire death problem in the state with civilian fire fatalities, right? Which is contributing to mental health, as I shared earlier.
Yep.
But also they said the fact that you got up there and you said that. And I think that's what people have to realize is that, well, wait a minute, if you can be the state fire marshal and you got a mental health professional and you acknowledge you got a backpack with too many rocks in it, maybe it's time for me to deal with my backpack. And I hope that inspires maybe somebody who's listening to this.
It helps dissolve.
100%. I think so.
Absolutely. I love the analogy about, I go to a dentist every 6 months. I go to the doctor, get a physical once a year. Right. Why don't you have a mental health professional to go to?
Well, I've had friends say, I sat there for 3 visits, and at the end, I still feel like I can't connect. And so now when you find your person, it's like finding the right doctor.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Or finding the right dentist, right?
Yes.
If once you find that person, then put them in your phone.
Yes.
And so that you have access to that. And
absolutely.
And that is, I mean, it took me 4 people before I found my therapist, right? And you hit the nail on the head. Yeah. Do not get discouraged if that first one, there's plenty of resources, especially with us. We can get you to somebody.
Yeah.
You don't hit it
huge.
off.
Think about how many people you go through to cut your hair right.
Yeah, that's true.
And you don't have a problem not going back.
No.
And you get a bad haircut at a place, you don't go back.
No,
so why would?
You're not afraid of offending. I'm like,
I'll pay $5 extra up the road because I don't want that bad haircut, right?
Scott, do you still have to get a haircut?
Not as often. Not as often.
Get a couple in there.
You hit it though. For you to say that, it took me 4 times because I don't think people understand that.
Yeah, it's going to take.
And it could, and you might hit it off on the first person.
Good advice.
I'll share this. Talk about going to a Q course. I actually went to a Q course, and based out of the Q course, one of the persons that was presenting knew some folks, and talking with that person, they said, "Hey, I think you could connect with that person." Well, that's even better, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Because I can say, hey, I can relate to what you're saying as a clinician themselves in this course. And that's the other part that I think people have to realize is that a lot of the Q courses that we have that are available, that are funded, that we can use the state funding for, there's a lot of professional people out there now that are saying, hey, I want to interact with fire, EMS, law enforcement.
Exactly.
So they're bringing forth.
And they're going to get better at it.
Yeah. And so as they get better at the classes too of saying, hey, I don't want to, on the peer side, but okay, I get it. It's another firefighter, another police officer telling me it's all right to, that you feel this way.
Be human.
Yeah. But here's somebody who's saying, hey, you might want to think about this.
Yes.
And I think that was, and it was uncomfortable. One thing that I really like about some of the Q courses, when I say I like it, folks, the only way we're going to get stronger is to challenge ourselves.
That's
right. Right? It is.
Yep.
So when you go to a class and somebody challenges you with something, you say, wow, I probably should try that, or I need to change, or I need to do this. Yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable, but that's how we get stronger, and that's how we get more resilient. And as we get stronger and resilient, I really think a lot of this recruiting and retention stuff starts to fix itself too. Yeah. I know we're losing people even on the career side. When I first hired in, nobody left.
No.
But I'll share this. Now,
it's not uncommon.
You hire 10 people in the city of Grand Rapids, and 20 years later, only 8 of them are left, or 6 of them are left.
Easily.
Because they moved on to other things, or they some of them, they had enough. It didn't take long, and they said, this isn't. And I think that's one of the things you start looking at the generational thing is that I think we get all fired up. At least kids want to try stuff. Well, let them try it.
Yeah.
And the bottom line, well, yeah, but they aren't going to stay for 30 years. If I can get 5 years where they're really engaged or 10 years where they're really engaged, and then they decide, hey, this isn't for me, and they got to go. That's the other thing. I've seen people try to talk people out of, well, you should stay. And if this is affecting your life to the point of, and you have other options and you have other job skills and stuff, I'm not saying I want them to leave. I'm saying I want them to get the help. But if leaving is the best option for them,
do what makes you happy.
Right.
Yep.
And that's a totally different mindset than back in the day. Tough it out.
Yep.
Suck
You
it up.
betcha.
Suck it up, Buttercup.
Yep.
Well,
Yep,
Kevin,
tough it
this has
out.
been an amazing conversation. We're going to have to get you back in this room because there's no way we covered everything. And
No.
we're going to get you
Yeah.
back here in some other discussions with some other people, and we're going to be working more. I think Frontline Strong Together 5 and Minds on the Frontline with the State Fire Marshal Office to do all the things we talked about here today.
Yep.
So thank you for your time.
Can I throw out a suggestion?
Please.
So maybe somebody who's listening to this says, hey, I think I can bring something to the equation and you want to get involved. You're always looking for folks to talk
Yep.
to too,
Hell yeah.
right?
Always.
Yes, always.
Yeah.
Always.
So, that's the other part of
Scott, give me your phone number.
that's
You know what? If you go on the website, you click on About Us, and right there, I have a link to contact me.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of folks out there that have a lot of good stuff. And
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
that's the part of how do we get them? And the more folks we get speaking from the heart too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and being as real as you can about this topic too.
Close
right?
to home as we can get until
Yeah.
you pick up that phone when you need it.
Yes.
And it's actually a good time here hanging out with y'all.
Thanks, sir.
Yes.
That was the fun
Well, next
part
time we
of
got more
setting it
time,
all
maybe we'll
up.
do in the
Yes.
summer. Go to a Tigers game. Man.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
Just
there
up
you
the
go.
road.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's the other part. So come film one of these, right?
Yeah.
Be part of the podcast. Get the audio, the
Yeah.
video part.
Go buy you a hot dog at Comerica.
And you're right. You're just down the street. So
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
All right, thank
thanks,
you.
Scott. I
Thanks a
appreciate
lot.
that.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Minds on the Frontline podcast. We have more great content coming out soon. Please check us out on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and make sure to like and subscribe to all Minds on the Frontline podcast social media channels. Thank you, and have a great day.